Today we are going to learn how to automate trend lines with Python. Trend lines are this really cool trading strategy where you look for a break of trend and then you place a trade in order to profit from the market. Today we will find out how to automate creating trend lines using Python. And I will link to the notebook below so that you can also imitate the same strategy and profit from the market. So let's first learn what is a trend line. A trend line, here is an interesting trend line trend trade just to show you what a trend line looks like. So trend lines work very well, especially for future markets. I have a related video on how to trade trend lines as a short video, which I will link in the description below. So if you look at crude oil futures, so we can look at the crude oil futures here where we are able to draw a nice trend line where there is an uptrend for the stock in this direction here. And then there is a break of the trend line where you can take a trade and you will profit from the stock going down here. So that essentially is basically what a trend line looks like. And the trend line trading strategy has been made very popular in YouTube by a number of traders in YouTube. If you search for trend line trading strategy, you can see a large number of videos. Tori Trades is one popular trader who exclusively trades this strategy, and we have reviewed her in a different video, which I will link down below in the description as well. So now let's find out how we can actually draw a trend line. So in order to do this, I downloaded data for platinum futures. The reason, as I said, is because trend lines work particularly well for futures. So this is the data that I downloaded. And as you can see here, we can form a nice trend line where we can sort of take a trade when the stock goes below the trend line, and then we can sort of profit from there. But how do we sort of do that programmatically? At this point, I would like to acknowledge a fellow YouTuber, NeuroTrader, who sort of gave me the motivation for this video, and my method for drawing trend lines is part of it is sort of borrowed from his methodology. So I'd like to acknowledge him, but there are some sort of important differences that I'll come to later in the video. But having said that, let's go to the strategy for drawing trend lines. So here, in order to draw the trend line, we will have three important steps. The first step is to find the best linear fit. And then we will shift that linear fit and then solve a constraint optimization problem. So at the first step, we will find the best linear fit. So in the language of statistics, a best linear fit is basically where you do a linear regression, which would look something like this, and then that would be the line that sort of reduces the least square distance from each of the data points. For convenience here, I have chosen the midpoint of the candle as a single data point. So it is going to try to minimize the square of distances from this point and so on. So that is the first step. And then we come to step 2, where we would shift that best linear fit down below all of the candles. So that would be our second step. So let's see how that looks like here. So here in this case, what that would look like is to take this line and just to go down all of the candles. So basically change the intercept but not the slope, and we would end up with a line like this, which is below all the candles and has the same slope as the best linear fit. So that is step 2. So now that we've completed step 1 and step 2, what we want to do really is to take this trend line and sort of go and fit it more snugly towards all the candles. So that would be step 3. How do we achieve that in practice? So that is a slightly more complicated problem. And basically the way that we achieve that in practice is that we solve a constraint optimization problem. So if you remember what we said earlier, here we are trying to solve a best linear fit, which is basically which reduces the sum of squares. So that would be the y minus y dash, which is the fitted line, at a given point, we want to reduce the squared distance between the actual value of the midpoint of the candle and the squared and the best linear fit. So that would be the linear regression. But here we are solving a more difficult problem, which is a constrained optimization problem, where in addition to solving this, we are constrained by the fact that we'll have to have each of the y minus y dash, which is the greater than 0. So that's our constraint. So those are the three important steps that we will follow in order to construct the trend line. And now I'm going to show you how to do this in Python. So let's see. So let's start from the beginning. So again, as you know, in most of my videos, I show how to download the data. So I'm not going to go through it again. So you can also find the link to the data set so that you can sort of imitate this process. And so we sort of convert the time to string, and then we have a helper function which allows us to draw the candlestick, and this is what the crude oil futures looks like. Now, I deliberately chose this particular set of time frame so that I can show you the nice trend line that you see here in this notebook. So let's see. Okay, so here I sort of tried to draw the least squares, but then I sort of converted everything into a function, and we will go through these functions to understand each of these steps. So we start with the case where there is a proper trend line, and step 0 is where we simply draw the candles and there is no trend line. And then step 1 would be to find the best linear fit. How do we do this in practice? So to get the best fit and the intercept, we need to find an x and a y. So the x is what we define as the location index, which is simply the index of the time of the data. So for example, so basically for each of the data points, I have like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's simply like an index of the time. And then I have the midpoint of the candle as the y values, and I use the linear regression function from scikit-learn in order to fit the model and find the slope and the intercept. And the line is basically the best fit line is the slope multiplied by x plus the intercept, which we will see here. So that allows us to get the best fit, which we observe here. So that is step 1. And then the second step will just pull down the best fit below all of the candles. So this is what that looks like. We'll pull down the best fit below, keeping the slope the same below all of the candles. So let's see how that looks like. So the function to do that would be to say that get the initial slope and intercept, get slope init slope intercept. And again, it does the same sort of thing where it finds the slope and intercept with linear regression. And then it finds the bottom of each candle, which is the minimum of the open and the close. For green candles, the bottom is the close with the, So for green candles is the open, and for red candles, it's the close. So we find the bottom of the candle, and then we find the offsets. And we find the minimum offset, and we pull down the intercept by the minimum offset, and that is how we get the new intercept. The slope, as I said, does not change in this particular step. So now we are at step 2, where we have shifted the best fit line below all of the candles. So now now the third step will begin, where we'll sort of make the line sort of fit more snugly, where the idea is to do a constrained optimization, solve the constrained optimization problem to get the final slope and intercept, and then we visualize these final slope and intercept here, as you can see. So how do we solve this constrained optimization problem? Well, luckily for us, scipy.minimize is the function that solves a constrained optimization problem. we have to specify the constraint and the objective. So the objective here is to minimize the least square distance. So we have the x, and then we have the best fit line, which is mx plus b, where m and b are like the slope and the intercept respectively. And then our objective is to minimize this least square between this and the bottom of the candle. And then we have a constraint where we again do the same thing, find the best fit line, but here we say that the candle bottom minus the line best fit must always be positive. So with that, we specify that it is going to be an inequality constraint, which means that in each case the constraint has to be greater than 0, and then we specify the function, which is this function here. So that is our constraint. And then we finally call the scipy.minimize, which does the constraint sort of optimization for us, and we find the optimized slope and intercept. So that is essentially in a nutshell how how we can draw a trend line using Python. And one important difference from NeuroTrader's video is where we use this constraint optimization procedure in order to find the final trend line. Another important distinction is, or another important addition, I would say, that I want to make is to find a good trend line. So not all cases are good trend lines. For example, here we found a different sort of time frame in the data, which is an okay trend line, but I wouldn't say the trend line is as good as this particular case here. So how do we programmatically distinguish between a good and a bad trend line, which would be really important if we were to take a trend line trade? So here I show two important strategies to spot good trend lines. First, I calculate the median candle width. Now, strategy one is to check how many candles are close to the trend line. And by close, I mean they are within one median candle width. So we find the best fit line, and then we find the distance of the trend line of the candle bottom to the best fit line. So the distance of the candle bottom to the best fit line is sort of what we call the distance from the trend line, and then we calculate how many of these distances are below the median candle width. So that would say that we calculate each of these distances here and ask ourselves how many are below the median candle width. This is a case of a good trend line where a number of distances should be below the one median candle width, but in a bad trend line case, there'll be a lot of candles like way far away from the trend line. The second idea to find a good trend line is to calculate the median distance from the trend line or some other percentile. Again, we find the distance from the trend line for each of the candles, and then we find like the percentile of some percentile of the median distance. So percentile equal to 50 will be median, for example. And now we test out this strategy for our two cases, the good case and the bad case. So this is the good trend line case, which is this case here, and we find that there are sort of there are 4 touch points, which is the candles close to the trend line. There are sort of 4 touch points here, and the median distance of the candles is 1.52. Now we go to the bad case, which is, this case here. This is the bad case. And here we find there are 3 touch points, which is true, like this one, and this one. But the median distance is much larger. And so I feel like the median distance is probably the best indicator of whether we have a good trend line or a bad trend line. And the way that I would sort of take these trades is to find some threshold of the minimum distance, and then say that a trend line is good if it's below the threshold, and then use that to take out trades. Thank you for listening to this video. If you like the Python trading strategies with Python, definitely like and subscribe, and watch out for more videos which are similar to this.